What are your thoughts on people launching crypto projects like Trump's World Liberty Financial?
Every non-Bitcoin crypto asset is a coin.
People talk about evolution. The last 100 years, it's like we're devolving as a society.
When you take out GOD, GOV fills the vacuum. The state is striving to become a secular religion.
How did our world go from Milton to Mein Kampf 300 years later?
When you print money, you are violating private property. Tax a citizenry, you are violating private property.
But you need spiritual freedom, you need economic freedom, you need educational freedom.
One of my favorite definitions of evil is the force which believes its knowledge is complete. And when you think you have done that, you should really check yourself.
I'm Josh Jalinski, the financial quarterback. We're being joined by Robert Breedlove. We're talking about everything. His journey into Bitcoin, freedom, maximalism. So Robert, you are a freedom maximalist. Have you trademarked that term? Because I think you're the only one I've heard who uses that. I like it.
As a freedom maximalist, I would not agree with the concept of IP, so trademarks would be out of the question.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Ideas are not scarce. They're non-rivalrous, right? Once you have an idea, you can use the idea without preventing me from deriving any benefit from the idea, which is not the same for, a physical asset, right? If I have a car, for me to enjoy the benefits of the car, I have to deprive you of the benefits of using the car at the same place and the same time. So actually IP is communistic or socialistic or a scam and inconsistent with freedom maximalism. So I don't know if I coined it or not. There's obviously Bitcoin maximalism became a term in the wake of, I think, Vitalik Buterin making fun of people that were focused solely on Bitcoin, calling them maximalists, and then Bitcoiners kind of absorbed that as their namesake. And I just basically made a play on that because even Bitcoin, as great as it is, I still consider it to be a means to an end. And that end is human freedom. So that's what I'm really focused on, trying to maximize human freedom for myself and fellow humans.
Robert, he is the, creator of the What is Money podcast. What is money is the rabbit that leads us down the proverbial rabbit hole. It is what Robert terms as the foundational question. What is money? It is the most important question for finding truth in the world. We're also going to talk about philosophy. I have to pick 16 books for my junior to read. So we homeschool. So I'm going to ask you this. This is a good question to start out, Robert, because you're a philosopher. What would be the 16 books, 8 novels, 8 nonfiction that you would have my oldest daughter read this year for school?
Just a little lightweight question to get started, huh?
I know, right?
That's hilarious. I'll start with, for your junior, 16 years old?
Yeah.
16 years old. Okay, well, I'm going to start with The Creature from Jekyll Island because I think if you want to understand the real game that's being played and the most dangerous cartel in the world and how it actually functions and the consequences that it produces, I don't think there's a better place to start than that. Obviously, it's a book about central banking, the nature of money, and specifically the inception of the Federal Reserve. It reads like a detective novel, but it is nonfiction. G. Edward Griffin's an excellent author, excellent writer. He's been on the show. But that book, it can maybe leave you feeling a little bit dark, maybe a little hopeless. So I know it left me feeling a little bit hopeless when I read it before Bitcoin was invented, being that I felt like I had discovered the most significant problem in the world, yet there was no apparent solution. And so maybe after he reads that, he or she reads that, they could jump over to a book like Honest Money by Gary North. Gary North is a famous libertarian Christian thinker, philosopher, writer. And I think his book, Honest Money, is just, he intentionally writes it with a very simple prose, very short sentences, not a lot of complex run-on sentences and things. It's a very approachable, accessible book. And he approaches economics and money and banking from real first principles, a very elemental approach to the thing. So, for instance, you learn to understand concepts like income in a non-monetary way, right? It's actually the benefit being derived from an asset. And the fact that, things like profit, which we typically consider to be purely a financial phenomenon, North will tell you is actually a psychological phenomenon. It's a matter of satisfaction. And so he explains the principles of economics and money and banking through a simple, accessible Christian/philosophical lens. And it's a really good book. From there, I would go into The Ethics of Money Production by Guido Hulsmann. This makes a really strong ethical argument against central banking, against the monopolization of money, and for free markets. You could then go a level deeper and read The Theory of Money and Credit by Mises. That one's hard.
I like
All
that.
of Mises' writing is hard, but it gives you a very intricate understanding, let's say, of how money and banking and how it actually works. It would kind of be opposite in many ways to honest money. It's much more of a sophisticated, you feel your brain growing with each page, let's put it that way, or at least struggling to grow with each page. And then the last one I would recommend, which is the classic on the theory of how money actually emerges, that's embraced by most Austrian economists, which is On the Origins of Money by Carl Menger. And he just presents kind of a economic anthropological theory for how money emerged. And it's, could be summed up by saying that as goal-directed actors, people try to take the shortest path between what they have and what they want. And as it turns out, money is a very efficient, emergent way to close the gap between where people are and where they want to be in terms of goal-seeking behavior. And so he describes how money emerges in that way. You said 16 books? No, 12.
I mean, you can give me however many you want.
Okay. Let's go into the philosophy domain, if we may, next. So those are my 5 on money.
I mean, this is like one of these questions, you could really have 100 books. So what we're doing with our kids, so freshman year, sophomore, junior, senior, we sort of have different eras. Last sophomore year was ancient history. So we did some Aristotle, we did some Plato, we did Jesus, Paul, we did Hebrew Bible, we did, who else we did? We did a lot of stuff. We did a little Kant, but long story, Kant is not really ancient, but kind of as a parallel to Plato and kind of look at the compare and contrast.
Yeah.
And was very heavy philosophical focus last year.
Okay.
Got into a lot of like deep questions of like, what is it called? I forget it. I blocked it from my mind. It was traumatic. Rationalism versus empiricism, and kind of went down some rabbit holes there.
Yeah, of course.
So 1 year we're going to do ancient history and philosophy and literature kind of as like a module. This year it's modern only because she's a debater, and the debate question deals with modernity. She's in this really cool. It's National Christian Forensics Association, something like that. They have them all over. These kids are, bright spots in the world, gone mad.
Yeah.
And their debate topic this year has to do with something about AI and war. And I forget what the resolution is, but is it a good thing that robots are going to be able to now bomb people? And so the era that we're going to study is modernity, from Paradise Lost, Milton, to Brave New World. We're going to do a little 1984. We're we're going to add some, so we're going to go kind of modern. So we're going to do a little Communist Manifesto. We're going to do a little, we're going to read how dark the last 100 years have been. And so the theme will be Paradise Lost. So if you read Milton, it's a very biblical Christian worldview. How did our world go from Milton to Mein Kampf, 300 years later? So we're going to kind of study that and kind of read the best thinkers. We're going to read Darwin. We're going to read people who were very profound. But it's a very depressing period. So I'm going to put when I do it, I'm going to do 8 depressing books and 8 positive books. So we're going to read some C.S. Lewis. We're going to read some others. Maybe I'll throw in some of yours. So this is why I'm, so my wife's like, you have to pick the books by Monday. You can't. So it's a little bit of a selfish question, but it's a good one because.
Okay. No, I appreciate the context because that's helpful with my answers.
Because 1984, my wife didn't want to read because she was like, some of the themes were too adult. So I'm probably dropping 1984 and adding Brave New World. I don't think that was that adult. But yeah. I don't remember it being as racy.
Brave New World is more apt probably for where we are as well. Because this whole idea of, the ultimate prison is the one that the prisoners don't realize is a prison, which is what Brave New World is kind of all about. Right?
Yeah, it's where we're living today, right?
Yeah, bread and circuses and don't worry about anything else, right? So you brought up Paradise Lost a couple of times.
As I was kind of gathering these books, I was putting them on a timeline. Mm-hmm. And part of me wanted to start out with Darwin or something, or Nietzsche, or the 1800s. But then I wanted to show... I've always wanted to read Paradise Lost. I've never read it. I've read about it.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis did a great commentary on it. So I said, you know what? Now let's do Paradise Lost. Yes. So how do we get from that, right, worldview?
Yeah.
That worldview kind of birthed the U.S. experiment.
Yeah.
To Marx, Hitler, Nietzsche.
Yeah.
And I know you're a big study of ideas guy, so I thought that would be an interesting thing to explore.
I, too, have not read Paradise Lost, so maybe you could let me know when you guys are reading that, and I'll try to read it at the same time. I do really want to read it, though, because I draw on it often. I've read parts of it, and I've read about it, like you said. One of my favorite definitions of evil actually comes from that book. Evil is the force which believes its knowledge is complete. Which is totalized knowledge, or totalizing knowledge, or the belief that one's idea or representation of the world is as complete as the world itself. And fundamentally, this is a totalitarian attitude towards the nature of existence, right? If I actually believe that my idea about the world is the most accurate idea there is, then all of a sudden I am justified morally, ethically, by any means necessary to bludgeon you over the head and get you to adopt my totalitarian vision, my utopian dream, my central plan to end all central plans. And so I think this caution that we're often given in wisdom traditions and great literature like Paradise Lost is that knowledge is inherently provisional, right? It can never contain, you cannot contain the totality of reality in linguistic propositions. And when you think you have done that, you should really check yourself because it introduces an ethical orientation that is typically horrible, right? It's, again, you could look at all the great atrocities across human history, and it's usually perpetrated under the guise of the greater good because we have discovered the ultimate utopian, typically technocratic utopian vision. And so also in that book, which may help answer the question of how we got from Paradise Lost to Mein Kampf, in Paradise Lost, the bad guy, one of the bad guys, Mephistopheles, I believe is his name, who's obviously a representation of the devil, often shortened to Mephisto. He actually encourages or tricks. This is where I need to read the book to get the specifics, but he is the one that instigates the counterfeiting of currency.
So he counterfeited currency in Paradise Lost? I didn't know that.
He instigates the counterfeiting of currency in part of that book. And you combine that with the other part of your question. You said, how did we get to Mein Kampf? And you consider that, Hitler he rose from the ashes of the Weimar hyperinflation, right? It's that society was utterly destroyed in terms of its socioeconomic fabric. And in those conditions of total destruction, a strong man rose, right? A very vile strong man, as it proved to be, but nonetheless, a philosophy that was very, very anti-human, right? In the extremes. I don't know. I always end up back on this principle of private property, and if you really dig into the earlier money books that I suggested, you'll come to appreciate how the primary, if not the sole, organizing principle of civilization really is private property. The reason we are all grouping ourselves together, and I know there's all these intangibles, right? Like we love and dating and socializing and all of these things, but at the core of it is an economic reason, and that is the division of labor, right? That we have social cooperation under the division of labor, which means that we actually all gain by participating in a social division of labor, meaning that if I do what I'm best at and you do what you're best at and we trade, then we both get more output per unit of input and we get higher quality and quantity of goods. So that is the reason, it's a very pragmatic reason that humans come together into societies. And the only way the division of labor works is when the individuals who do the work that others find valuable get to keep the value of their work and only relinquish it or trade it consensually with other people, other property owners, right? When you start to violate that principle through coercion, through violence, through statism, you dissolve the unifying principle of civilization itself. You could think of private property as like the glue that holds this whole thing together, right? As long as we can own stuff and we can trade freely with one another and we can innovate and we don't face the threat of uninitiated violence, then we can live prosperously and morally, frankly, right? The reason we have the luxury of morals and ethics is because we can accumulate capital under this structure. There's that old saying, eat first, then ethics, right? So like the fact that we can accumulate goods and have the luxury of leisure and reflection is what has allowed us to discover these moral principles that allow us to elevate our humanity and hopefully move a bit away from our animality. And so when you print money, you are violating private property. When you tax a citizenry, you are violating private property. When you regulate people's ability to use their private property under threat of force, right? I call this regulation by fiat, which is not what we have in English common law where the laws are discovered, right? Where we observe people interacting over long periods of time, we see how they resolve their disputes, and then we codify those dispute resolution processes. That's like a legal discovery process that we have in English common law. That's ideal. But there's another form of regulation, which is fiat regulation. And that's just some guy in political power signed a document that said you can do this or you can't do this. And so that too is a violation of private property. So all of these things, inflation, taxation, fiat regulation, these are glue dissolver, I guess, for civilization, right? Like if private property is the glue that's holding us all together, these outside forces are actually dissolving it. And so this is why I think we've seen societies boom and bust. And, Mises had this whole theory, the Austrian business cycle theory, that the printing of money, which again is the violation of private property, leads to the amplification of the business cycle. So bigger credit booms, bigger credit bust. I think that same principle applies to civilization more broadly. that when we engage in the violation of private property, you're going to get booming civilizations for a while they've got it figured out. And when you're printing money, you're giving this kind of like false stimulus into the economy, right? You're signaling to entrepreneurs that there's more capital available than there actually is. But then, of course, the road runs out, right? The tide pulls out, and you see who's swimming naked, as Warren Buffett would say. And then the whole thing crashes, and it crashes catastrophically. So what's the best thing we can do is figure out ways to preserve private property with the utmost integrity. Have you ever wanted to live in an off-grid community with complete food, energy, and water independence? If so, then you need to check out the farm at Okefenokee. The farm is a pioneering community designed to foster longevity and well-being, eliminating elements that detract from these goals. At the farm, the convergence of nature, nutritious food, a supportive community, and the ethos of slowing down is unparalleled. Positioned at the gateway to the UNESCO World Heritage-nominated Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, the farm at Okefenokee stands as a testament to a lifestyle that truly nurtures health and happiness. Unlike conventional housing developments where a token communal garden may suffice, the farm itself is the community. Small, intimate microvillages seamlessly integrate into the fabric of a sprawling agricultural community. So if you're interested in joining this off-grid community, then go to okefarm.com today to learn more about becoming a member. Make sure to tell them that I sent you for a $21,000 discount on their custom cabin pricing. Again, go to okefarm.com to learn more about joining this revolutionary regenerative agriculture community. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE.
How do we do that? But I'll get that question answered. A4 had a question, I think, on the new Trump coin. So we're going from, nice philosophical talk to
coins.
More what's going on now. Go ahead.
Awesome, thanks. Robert, so I guess this is more of a free market question just to get your insight, but considering the power of network effects in the digital economy, like, what are your thoughts on, people launching crypto projects like Trump's World Liberty Financial? Like, what does a world like that look like in your mind?
Every non-Bitcoin crypto asset is not decentralized and therefore is not money and therefore is a coin. So I would recommend people avoid them. I mean, ultimately, like, my ultimate value is freedom. Do whatever you want. But if you're going to ask for my advice, I would not suggest holding an asset that another counterparty can print or change the rules on, because then you're not holding your purchasing power in something that is risk mitigated. It's not surprising to me that we see anyone and everyone that's not a Bitcoin maximalist with any degree of influence in the world whatsoever trying to cash in on these crypto scams, because, well, they're like little money cults, basically. You can just start your own coin, right? And you convince enough people that it's a thing, then it might be a thing for a little while, long enough for you to sell into the retail pump, and then long enough for you to get out before the dump. But ultimately, that's what these things are. They're pump and dump schemes. And what differentiates Bitcoin is that it is truly decentralized. There is no individual or entity that can control its rules. it's not, this isn't something that really was created by even Satoshi. Let's say like Satoshi created Bitcoin, but it took this path of Bitcoin's emergence to cement its decentralization over time. So you could read a book like the Block Size Wars of 2017, where there was the fork wars between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And while Bitcoin ultimately won, Bitcoin Cash is, it's down 99% in terms of Bitcoin since then. That battle has been had. There were a lot of well-heeled and influential Bitcoiners on the side of Bitcoin Cash, but they could not deviate the social consensus of 10-minute blocks of a certain block size and a 21 million hard cap. Bitcoin Cash actually only wanted to increase the block size, so it didn't attack those other points, but that's kind of besides the point. Bitcoin has this battle-proven, battle-hardened record, if you will, right? Track record of being resistant to asymmetric attacks on its consensus protocol. Nothing else has that. So only Bitcoin is decentralized. Every other crypto project, and look, you don't have to take my word for it. Do your own research. I'm just telling you the conclusion that I've arrived at, and many other Bitcoin maximalists have also arrived at after doing hundreds to thousands of hours of research on this asset class, is that only Bitcoin is truly decentralized. And this is why the metaphor of Bitcoin as the internet of money is probably the best metaphor we've got. I also really like digital gold, because to understand gold and the properties of gold and what makes it good money is very useful in understanding Bitcoin. But the internet is ultimately just this stack of open source protocols for moving information around without asking anyone permission. And Bitcoin is basically that exact concept, except for money. You're moving purchasing power around without asking permission. And you're doing it in a way that no one can stop, censor, freeze, reverse, confiscate, etc. That means Bitcoin's not a company, right? It's a protocol. It's a commodity, whatever term you want to use. All the other crypto projects are companies. Someone made them up. Someone controls them. Someone can manipulate them. They can change the rules, etc., etc. So I hope that helped answer your question to some extent.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I just thought it was an important question to ask and have you talk about. Thank you so much. And thank you, Josh, for letting me up.
Thank you so much.
We have to be mindful too that the Trumps, whether you agree with this or not, I don't, they might be just doing the normal evolution of people as they kind of get into this space, learning. And frankly, it's probably not even him. It's probably, his son or some advisor. Hey, you got to do this. But yeah, I think it will, history will not treat the project too kindly, but
it will be forgotten without a doubt. And you're right, by the way. The Bitcoin maximalists are forged in those fires typically. It's not like they're just the good guys that figured out how it works and how it is. Like, no, typically they lost their ass doing whatever Shitcoin gambling project, and then through that pain, you learn that Bitcoin's the only thing that actually sticks around and ultimately matters in this entire wave of innovation.
Yeah, I mean, with me, it was just, I had so many friends that lost their shirt in so many ways. I sort of became, I don't know what you would say, Bitcoin maxi, Bitcoin foundationalist is probably a better term. I don't know what term.
I've heard Bitcoin essentialist before.
Yeah, whatever that term is, I would be that. But in terms of my experience through observing clients, friends, family, just, early Bitcoiners just do strange things that, one of my buddies, he had so much that he gave away and pissed away. And, if you just held on to what he had early, he'd be way better off. So it was more of just me observing what not to do.
Yeah.
Than losing my shirt. But that's the thing with Bitcoin community. Sometimes it's very judgmental on people just like you have a life, you have a spiritual journey, you have a monetary journey, you have a health journey.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of have all these journeys that people will kind of go the way they're supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a progression of, somebody arrives and they're a Bitcoin maximalist.
Yeah.
You have to be patient with people.
Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. As one of my business mentors once told me, the job of the boss is to eliminate confusion. The best antidote for confusion is access to truth, which brings clarity to business decision-making and thus optimizes the drive toward future business goals. Over 41,000 businesses have future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP system, which brings accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make decisions quickly and effectively. If I was still a CFO, NetSuite is undoubtedly the ERP system I would use in my business. Whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, you can download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/whatismoney. This guide is packed with useful insights and is free for you at netsuite.com/whatismoney. Again, that's netsuite.com/whatismoney.
So you were talking about how bleak everything is a little bit. And then how do we change that?
How do we change the dissolution of private property, right?
Yeah, like we are living in an era where it is the default impulse, just if we're sort of, US centric, to trash others' private property rights, whether it's litigation, regulation,
taxation, inflation,
how people deal with relationships, how people deal with church, people just family, people are just trashing each other. They don't have even a sense of private. Even you listen to the debate, right, this week. I don't want to take a side, but it's like Trump says, I want to give you more of your wages when you work overtime, and Kamala wants to tax your wages now if they're unrealized. So it's like we're not having debates of freedom versus tyranny. It's shades of tyranny. It's
exactly.
One is less free than the other, but it's still within the paradigm of
That's right.
There is no private property right.
That's a great point. And that's a point that Rothbard made, that he said it was so difficult. Obviously, Murray Rothbard, one of the greatest libertarian authors of all time, talking about how difficult it was to have a rational conversation with other people about these topics because we live under the paradigm of statism, right? Where when you say something like the perfection of private property, the flip side of that is you're saying 0% taxation, 0% inflation, 0% regulation by fiat. And people find that unimaginable because, where can you find that in the world? It doesn't really exist. I mean, you could maybe say that when you get to that, I hate this term, but people often use it, the elites, the global technocrats, the WEF crowd, whatever, when you get to that level, that's sort of what you are angling for, right? You're trying to be above the rules for thee, not for me type of dynamic. And in that situation, well, taxation typically doesn't apply to those guys. Neither does inflation. I mean, I guess inflation always applies to some extent, but if you're just the one printing the money, you're on the receiving side.
Well, they benefit from it, right? They're going to buy the house that inflates,
And they're going to probably directly receive either the dividend issued by the central bank that they're a partial holder in, or they're otherwise going to indirectly benefit from the money printing itself, right? It's called the Cantillon effect. Those closest to the money spigot benefit at the expense of those furthest. So it's the literal super rich stealing from the middle class and the poor through the printing of money. What can we do about all of this? This is again, that's why The Creature from Jekyll Island was so depressing, because you read that book, it lays all of this stuff out in excruciating and entertaining detail, but it leaves you with no solution. There's no viable solution. And so I read that book in probably the year 2004, 2005. It's a young man, 18, 19 years old. Remember, actually bought a abridged version of the book called Dishonest Money and gave it to some of my friends and family for Christmas. And I was like, oh, this is it, guys. Like, here, we're going to fix the world. Everyone read this book, and then we're going to see the problems, and we're all going to go out and fix it. And so...
That was me, too. 05, 04, yeah.
Some people read it, and they came back to me, and they're like, okay, very interesting book, very, good arguments. I see that this is a problem, but what are we actually going to do about it? I just tripped over this stumbling block. I'm like, I had no good answer. I'm like, you're right. I don't know. I thought we were just going to all, have this collective awakening and this thing would somehow resolve itself. From a more practical standpoint, there was simply no tool or technology in existence at that time that could release the stranglehold of the central bank on the world, right? You have to operate inside the banking system, right? You can say, okay, maybe physical gold. I can take all my purchasing power out of the system and put it in physical gold. And I can try and, drive all over town or fly all over the world with bags of gold coins and just deal that way. But that's super impractical, right? And it's also super high risk, right? Someone finds where you buried the gold in your backyard, or they, whatever. It subjects you to a lot of potential coercion. So prior to Bitcoin, there simply was no way to take your purchasing power out of the system and to continue to conduct your life practically. To stop the rampant and increasingly normalized violation of private property, people need recourse to a form of private property that is extremely difficult to violate. So if you are living in a regime that is taxing you too much and or printing too much money and or regulating you too much by fiat, your vote of no confidence on that regime would be to sell all of your assets and move your purchasing power into Bitcoin and take yourself elsewhere, right? Bitcoin energizes and makes the voting with your feet process much more effective. Co-founder of a Bitcoin exchange I'm a shareholder in called Swan, he often tells a story of when his family left Russia back in, I think, the 70s or 80s, maybe. Could have been earlier, I'm not sure. And he said they could only leave the country with $400. The country basically capital controlled you to where you could only physically exit the borders with $400 US, which was, more money than it is today, but still not a lot of money, right? Especially when you're leaving with your entire family to start a family in a new world. Had something like Bitcoin existed at that time, the father or whoever could have memorized 12 words and put whatever amount of purchasing power he had available to himself actually on his brain and walked out of the country circumventing all of those capital controls. And so in that world where people can more emphatically vote with their feet by moving their purchasing power out of and into regimes, out of regimes that mistreat them and into regimes that treat them better, then all of a sudden we are subjecting the state to something more like a free market force, right? The state, who's accustomed to being able to print money ad infinitum and thus not be accountable to a P&L, right? They basically will run up deficits forever and then just inflate them away onto the back of their citizens. Yeah, right? Inflation is basically this form of slow motion default where you're making taxpayers pay for the accumulation of government debts. All of a sudden, more difficult to print money because every time you print money, you monetize Bitcoin. And every time you monetize Bitcoin, you're encouraging people to move their purchasing power into this hyper portable, hyper concealable. If you custody it properly, it's an unseizable asset. So the state is like now in its old practices of taxing, inflating, and regulating, it's actually destroying itself because it's pushing people to adopt Bitcoin, essentially. You could call me too narrow-minded about Bitcoin or too focused on the economics as a solution to the larger political problems and cultural problems that we face. And maybe there's some truth to that, right? Like to a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. But I do think that if you do the studying and you do the reading of the great libertarian philosophers that precede us, right? The shoulders of the giants upon which we stand, you will come to see how important it is that humans have private property, how integral it is to the unity of civilization and even to our own outlook, right? We can have a lower time preference is the term they use, right? A longer time horizon comes with being able to more certainly store the fruits of our labor into the future. We can think about things in larger and longer terms, literally, to the extent that we can control the fruits of our labor and keep them free from coercion. Bitcoin is a tool that radically advances us along that path. I'm not saying it is the solution. There are many other complexities that come with individualism, rationalism, a continuous resistance to established authorities. But I do think getting the politics out of money, getting the central bank out of the currency counterfeiting business once and for all, that is a giant leap towards the maximization of human freedom. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-key vault guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which have unilateral control over your keys. Your funds are fully auditable on-chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only move or be withdrawn at your explicit direction. Multi-institution custody removes the technical, mental, and physical burdens of private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Bitcoin is money, and as the price continues to appreciate, OnRamp helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, insurance, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security or accessibility. Schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team to learn more at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove.
I think there's more to it. I think it's, you have a trinity of the economic right of private property. That's your social component, sort of the social contract. Mm-hmm. You need a spiritual component. You need a strong family. You need a strong church. You need strong money. And church doesn't mean a state church. It doesn't mean a particular denomination. But you need spiritual freedom. You need economic freedom. You need educational freedom. I think it's and I got that too. I was just overwhelmed. Remember, I was trying to work on political campaigns. I helped the guy who changed Jersey City. So you would think New Jersey, right, would embrace the man who, his name was Mayor Brett Schundler, totally transformed Jersey City from an armpit kind of city to, a city that attracted Pershing and Bank of New York and what's the other one? TD and Goldman Sachs. And, I was, a little bit of a, idealistic guy. I'm going to help this guy run for governor. And then the campaign, crashed and burned as his fellow Republicans knifed him in the back. This was a deep thinker, great thinker. He would have been amazing. And after a while, Bitcoin, yes, but money, family, building a business, building economic freedom, and my family, having kids. I think the only way, and I think Elon and others are right, we have this birth dearth. The only way to change civilization the next 20, 30 years is to have a lot of Bitcoin babies and a lot of people that embrace these concepts and teach them to be free thinkers. I mean, so when I started this discussion with, what books you'd recommend my daughter, I don't agree with half of the people we're going to give her to read, but I want her to understand what was the role of Nietzsche in creating a Hitler? What was the role of 19th century German philosophy, And there was some very good things Nietzsche brought up and some very scary things. And having that tension of how people can write amazing things and then things that then were used to create such great evil.
That's right.
And the 20th century is that, it's funny, people talk about evolution. The last 100 years, it's like we're devolving as a society.
Yeah.
And I do think as the darkness sort of is growing larger, the brightness is growing brighter. There was no Bitcoin 20 years ago.
That's right.
We would have these talks of, okay, we're going to do gold. We're going to put everything in gold. I remember this in college. Yeah. And it was just not practical. And so my realization was, hey, I'm just going to do my best I can. And as a father and raise 7 free thinking people who hopefully can change the world one person at a time, because that's I think the only way we're going to do it. Satoshi was one man, right? Or whoever he was. And there was some deep spiritual things within Satoshi where he was selfless and Christ-like in a sense. We don't know, and he even created something where he wasn't the central component in it, and he kind of knew that impetus of the theological term, I guess, would be the depravity of man. He knew that our impulse was to be a little selfish. So he created this trustless network. So we're going to go to our listeners. If you have a question for Robert, we got Terrence. Terrence, do you have a question? I know you want to come up.
Good to see you, Robert and Josh, as always. My question is, do you feel that there might be an overemphasis on family and traditional values by Bitcoiners that could turn off, for example, crazed or uncrazed childless cat ladies in the Democratic Party, for example, or just people who are center left, more progressive politically, because I feel like some of the things you guys are talking about, while I'm sympathetic, that I'm not sure the normies I talk to in socialist Los Angeles would find too compelling.
But I think I want Robert to answer that. But Terrence, I was going to call you Howard, but
it's okay.
But
Could
Terrence,
be an upgrade.
but we hang out. You're a great guy. You can be of different. That's why I love Bitcoin. You can be of different philosophical persuasions, political persuasions, and there is this beautiful commonality. Whether you're a childless cat lady or a more of a traditional values type person, I don't know. I think there's some transcendent themes that go beyond division.
This is one of those things that is so pervasive that we just don't stop to appreciate it. But even when you say that crazy cat lady in Los Angeles, I guarantee you, if you go and steal that lady's cat, she's going to get mad, right? Which means she appreciates the principle of private property, right? You take a 3-year-old's toy away from him, he's going to get mad because it's encoded in us as a territorial species to want to own things that other people can't just arbitrarily steal from us. So I would be somewhat sympathetic to your question in saying that, okay, do current Bitcoiners and their excessive emphasis on traditional value systems, does that cause crazy cat lady in Los Angeles to not be interested in that social circle? Perhaps. But I would further say that would be thinking in a very myopic and short-term time horizon. Pascal has a quote that I love on this topic. He says that science advances from funeral to funeral, so that it is the best ideas that outcompete worse ideas in the free market of ideas among the minds of us rational animals across space and time that really moves civilization forward. And frankly, crazy cat lady in some horrific communistic 1984 Brave New World future probably couldn't own a cat, right? Or would be otherwise inhibited from doing whatever it is she likes to do. And although she might not appreciate Bitcoin today, I can guarantee you once she has the boots kicking in the door, you will want to be able to put all of your purchasing power on your brain and get away, So it's a matter of time and pain. And it's unfortunate that humans have to learn this way, but it does seem like many of us, most of us perhaps even, many of us are learners that require a lot of pain for the lesson to really sink in, right? It's much more cost effective to learn from the mistakes of others through reading books or, otherwise learning about history and the experiences of those who came before us. But unfortunately, most of us don't do it that way. So I actually just totally don't care, right? I don't care if the focus on traditional values dissuades the cat lady from buying Bitcoin, because in my mind, that's just natural selection sort of playing itself out. And, if you are the one that's conserving your purchasing power more effectively across time, and you're making more children, and you're instilling them with good ideologies that help them to be cooperative, moral, prosperous citizens, well, then you're just seeding the world with people that help humanity flourish in the long run. And if that comes at the cost of someone not adopting that ideology along the way because they didn't like the way a family looked or the way the traditional value people presented themselves, well, then, I'll accept that as the cost.
My first interaction with Bitcoiners was more atheistic pothead types.
It's true.
That were really non-religious. They had nothing to do with, that seems to be a later last 5 years development as Bitcoin is maturing, those atheistic, agnostic individuals are kind of growing up and seeing, or they're reading some of the great thinkers and thinking,
Heisenberg, the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you.
Yeah, I think there's some truth there. And I would even argue that with the whole childless cat lady thing, well, that's where you come in, Terrence. You can appeal to the childless cat ladies. You know, everybody has a role to play. No, but I also think there's something Hegelian, the Hegelian dialectic, where we are just conditioned by the state that you can have someone who has a different belief set, but you can't have fun with them. You can't share some commonalities. Right. You are either this or that. Yes. You are either, I don't know. I'm just using the abortion, and you're either pro-life without exceptions, or you are for abortion up to the day someone's born. Like, I personally think that's the way our educational system has groomed us to belittle status, that we now need the government to come in and police our differences because we can't really get along with people of a different value system.
I agree that the existence of political statism causes us to overemphasize the political dimensions of our personality, of both ourself and other. We really care, like, oh, what is your position on X or your position on Y? And then if we don't have the same position or the same perspective, then we need to fight about it. And I think that's just kind of a result of the pressure that the democratic process creates, right? Like, you're forcing people to take sides, literally. It's like, are you red? Are you blue? Are you this? Are you that? And so it just permeates down all the way into the way we look at ourselves and the way we look at the world around us. And in the book, I don't know if we haven't talked much about this book, but the book, The Sovereign Individual, which was written in 1997. But one of the points they make in their book is that, once you get the state out of human affairs a bit through things like Bitcoin and, there's some other social media sort of gets the state out of the media business to some extent, and et cetera, that people kind of wake up from this hallucination. Like, oh, wait, politics and your political opinions actually don't matter that much, because if it's not serving an economic end, right? If I'm not voting myself some money or power or influence, and all of a sudden I'll kind of care less about my position on, abortion or this or that or whatever it may be. Not to say that it goes away completely, but we're over indexed on it right now. Like, it makes us too hyper polarized. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably get it. You get that Bitcoin upends everything that state-sponsored schools teach us about money. For those who get the importance of Bitcoin, it is important that we have a smart way to buy and hold Bitcoin. My friends at Coinbits, the oldest Bitcoin-only exchange in the United States, have pioneered the concept of roundups, which converts your spare change into Bitcoin. Simply connect your credit or debit cards, and your usual purchases are rounded up to the nearest dollar, letting you stack sats on every purchase without even thinking about it. Coinbits also provides a terrific self-custody experience. Connect a hardware wallet for automatic withdrawals into cold storage to minimize your risk and stay sovereign over your Bitcoin. My favorite Coinbits feature is Coinbits Plus, which gives you the best exchange rate on Bitcoin. It even gives you real-time feedback on how well you are doing on your savings plan. With Coinbits Plus, power users can save more money to buy even more Bitcoin. All that, plus peer-to-peer cash and Bitcoin payments, target orders, price alerts, and more, means Coinbits can help you do almost anything you need to do with Bitcoin. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove to sign up today. Again, that is Coinbits, BITS.app/breedlove. Before starting the What is Money show, I spent most of my career as a CFO, overseeing internal technology implementations and business acquisitions. Over the next 10 years, it is projected that over 12 million businesses in the US will be sold. If you are an operator running a business generating between $5 and $200 million of revenue, and you're considering selling your business within the next decade, then there is a significant opportunity for you to deploy technology to streamline business processes, reduce operating costs, and enhance the multiple your business ultimately sells for. To this end, I am partnering with the team at Emerge Dynamics, a firm with decades of experience in maximizing the value of privately held small and middle market businesses. Go to emergedynamics.com/breedlove to learn how you can build an attractive, high multiple company that maximizes your return when you fully exit. Again, that's emergedynamics.com/breedlove.
And I would argue because we don't have a strong sense of faith and family.
Yes.
And here's the thing. It's not that people, I've had listeners who say, oh, you talk too much about your faith and your values. I'm like, no. Well, that's who I am. It's my show. I want to. Yeah. but I fundamentally, because I think they might agree with certain other things of me. But like, I fundamentally look at, okay, the world's going to hell, metaphorically. The only way we can heal it is through raising independent thinkers who could, so J.D. Vance could go out and have a beer with the childless cat lady. You know, you have to have for our world to progress where we don't end up like the French Revolution. I mean, if you study history, cultures like ours do not end well. They end up in guillotines and Napoleon. So I'm deeply concerned about where we end up. That's why I'm talking about it, even though my economic motive is like, it's not good business to really talk about these things because you'll offend 40% of the people listening or whatever, 30% of. But I just view as, hey, I have a little bit of a platform, and if I can, have remember, Terrence, we had a nice time, and you worked for Obama and stuff. We had a good time, talking about your Obama days. And like, I don't really care if we don't vote the same. We can be friends. And, if the childless cat lady's cat dies or gets eaten by the people, I can feel bad for the person who lost their cat. And I can feel bad for the Haitian that's maybe being mischaracterized. It's like you don't have to be for one thing or the other. It's a real, I think it's a symptom of the fact that people are not like logical anymore. Like, one of the things we teach our kids too is logic. Everyone, if you have a child or even yourself, take one logic course, like one introductory logic course. And you realize our whole world, and I'll have my kids watch the presidential debate, and they can't handle it after like 20 minutes. They're like, shut it off.
Anyone that criticizes people talking about religion, I think fundamentally misunderstands or misdefines what religion is, right? That we are, it's almost like by virtue of using language, we have to have these points of social consensus. And these things are all religion-like, right? Sometimes people call money a belief system. The English language itself and every word in it, right? We have these points of agreement, right? That we agree on the definitions of terms, and that's what lets us exchange ideas. I mean, that's pseudo-religious in a way, right? It's just a belief system that we've all subscribed to, and there's other ones that compete. There's Chinese, and there's all these other languages, and so we are fundamentally religious animals in a way, right? Like, we're the animal that has religion. And this is a real deep rabbit hole. I've really enjoyed the work of Rene Girard recently. And he's saying that we basically invented religion to contain mimetic violence. And so religion is the origin point of human rationality and all of these other things. But if you take it for granted or take it at face value that man is a religious animal, well, then all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense that when you take out God, GOV fills the vacuum, right? Like the state is striving to become a secular religion. That's why they do things like have Trans International Visibility Day on Easter Sunday, right? Like they're competing. They're trying to get people to take out one set of software and install a new set of software, and in which worldview the state basically is deified. And this is why I appreciate what you're doing, having a lot of kids and fearlessly talking about what you want to talk about, because I do think that actually dialogically trying to discover truth continuously is what breaks the illusion and the spell that the state really needs to uphold its existence. And I think the greatest dangers to the state are those things, right? It's, what you're doing with your kids. Critical thinking is a great danger to the state because once you engage in it, you come to see it for the scam that it is. A unified population, ideally a unified and armed population. This is a great danger to the state, right? They don't have they can't exploit the asymmetry of power projection. If the state is armed and you are not, well, then all of a sudden you are very easy to exploit. But if you are a unified population and you are armed, well, as the old saying goes, an armed society is a polite society. And the third great danger to the state, as far as I can tell, are strong men and women, right? Like strong people that will say no and refuse to put up with whatever the scam is. What I consider to be the near perfection of private property and how that, gives people recourse to something the state can't stop, et cetera, we can do exactly what you're doing, which is try to tell the truth, try to raise kids that are critical thinkers, free thinkers, teach them about all of these ideas, principles, and the history surrounding them and by which we discovered them, and make them as strong as we can.
I also think people are triggered by religion generally because they had some bad experience with.
Yeah, of course.
And I think the whole replacing God with GOV is so huge. Like, It is where we are now, where if you were to be from the 1800s, right? 1850s, like revivalist America, Charles Finney. That's another great book of history. The Autobiography of Charles Finney. When you study a guy who was like a rock star in the time. And now you think of like Taylor Swift in how they thought of Charles Finney in his day. Or Dwight L. Moody or Charles Spurgeon. Right. These great preachers. If you were from the 1850s and you transported in time to today, you would think you were in church if you were at a Taylor Swift concert or a Kamala Harris rally. Or a Donald Trump rally. And I think when you go fundamentally down to it, like when you talk about, well, I could take any person, the childless cat lady, or the most ardent Trump supporter, and the reasons they love their particular candidate or don't like the other are fundamentally religious categories. Think about it. What don't people dislike about Trump? They dislike his manners, how he treats people, his verbal destruction of people. It's very religious in a way.
Yeah.
He's not loving. He's not kind.
Right.
He's not Christ-like. If you want to use that term. And then the same thing with Kamala. She's not, whether it's, her beliefs on abortion, her beliefs on this, her beliefs on this. So I think we are fundamentally religious. Kenneth Burke, he's in my top 10 books. The Rhetoric of Motives. You ever read this book?
No.
This is up there, by the way. You would love this. You'd get so into it. He defines man, and the guy was like a socialist or something, but he is a great cultural critic, totally non-religious. I don't think he believed in anything, but he has Burkean theory of identification. I think that's in there. He's amazing. He wrote a book called The Rhetoric of Motives, where he defines a man Man is the symbol using, symbol making, symbol misusing. So you could exchange symbol with religious or worship categories.
Yeah.
Animal, inventor of the negative or moralized by the negative. Think about it. 10 Commandments, a lot of them are do not this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Separated from his natural conditions by instruments of his own making.
Yeah.
Goaded by the spirit of hierarchy, kind of your linguistic side.
Yeah.
Or moved by a sense of order and rotten with perfection.
Wow.
Isn't that a great definition?
Man.
I knew you'd be into him.
That's great.
He's in one of the top 16 books.
So The Rhetoric of Motives, title of the book?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check that out.
He was around the 30s where he kind of became big. And he was 1966 work, Language as Symbolic Action.
Exactly. That's how I was, when you said symbol making, symbol using, symbol misusing.
He's the guy who kind of, a lot of people copy him.
You went to religion with that, the symbol making, using, but I was going to language actually. But again, Rene Girard would say they're bound together.
Yeah, they're kind of the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are a language user, you are religious. Like they're very closely intertwined, those two things.
Parting thoughts.
I mean, you're an intensely curious person, as am I. I've found the Bitcoin rabbit hole to be a great direction to channel that curiosity. Like, it's almost like the more you're not learning about just Bitcoin, you're not learning about just the nature and history of money, but you end up learning about what it is to be human, right? You're learning about, psychology, sociology, mimetic theory, the origins and history of consciousness. Like, it just goes on and on and on. It just really opens up into this labyrinth of intellectual, philosophical exploration. And I've just found it to be extremely fun and rewarding. And frankly, when all the talking is done, you find great value in people like Christ and people like Socrates that actually, they take all of the philosophy that they talked about and espoused, and they embody it, right? They incarnate their philosophy. Socrates died for the principle of justice. Christ died for our sins, according to Christianity. These are people that did more than just talk the talk. They really, truly walked the walk. And even if you don't believe that either of them existed and it's all made up, they still provide exemplary role models for us to try and imitate, to try and be like, to strive toward, right? Even if it was totally fictional, and I'm not saying that it is, but even if it was, you still have this mythology that is almost like an ideal. These are ideal ways of being for humanity and something towards which we can strive. And so I'm just very excited that Bitcoin has led me into all of this stuff. It led me off a darker path and into this journey in life, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. A lot of fun.
Thank you, Josh. Great to see you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and click here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help us shine light on the corruption of money. And be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.